He hit me. At my sister's wedding. Right there in front of 150 guests. Just because I refused to hand over the house I spent 10 years saving for. Hi, I'm Jenna. And I never thought my own father would raise a hand to me, let alone during what was supposed to be a celebration of love. But when you've been invisible your whole life, standing your ground can make people furious. What happened next? Well, let's just say I didn't just walk away. I walked into a courtroom and froze every one of his accounts. Before we jump into the story, if you don't mind, let me know where you're from by leaving a comment below. That way I can send a special hello your way. Now go ahead, grab yourself a warm cup of water and find a comfy spot. It's time to begin the story. In my family, love always had conditions. I never met them. The earliest memory I have is of Elaine's first birthday party. I was 6, holding a balloon string that kept slipping from my fingers while Mom fussed over the cake. It was a lopsided bunny with too much pink frosting. Everyone said it was adorable. No one noticed when my balloon floated up into the maple tree out front. I remember staring at it, just watching it drift higher. That's the first time I remember feeling small. Our house was a modest one in a quiet Michigan suburb. Creaky floorboards, beige carpets with worn patches, and an overfilled fridge, humming louder than the TV. The living room wall was lined with Elaine's dance trophies by the time she turned 7. Each one had a little gold figurine on top, arms outstretched like they were proud just to be seen. Elaine was expressive. Dimples, curls, a laugh like wind chimes. I was quiet, always reading, glasses by 2nd grade. My mom, Corinne, once joked to a neighbor, "Jenna's our little professor, but Elaine's the star." They both laughed. I smiled too, but something inside me folded in on itself. When Mom shopped, Elaine got outfits from the boutique with matching hairbands. I got school uniforms from a clearance bin, 2 sizes too big. "You'll grow into them," she'd say, tugging at the stiff waistband. I once won a state-level writing contest in 6th grade. The prize was a little trophy and a reading at the school auditorium. I wore the nicest thing I had, navy pants, a borrowed blouse. My parents didn't come. Elaine had rehearsal. Later that night, I placed the trophy on the kitchen table. No one asked why it was there. Holidays were another kind of lesson. One Christmas, Elaine unwrapped a karaoke machine with a pink microphone. I got a pack of socks still clipped together with plastic. "You needed these," Mom said flatly. "Now say thank you." I did. Then I walked to my room and folded the packaging into the trash. One summer, I drew a horse flying through a sky of yellow clouds. I remember shading the wings just right with colored pencils from the library. I showed Mom as she fed Elaine applesauce. She glanced down and said, "A blue horse? Why not draw something real?" "Elaine draws sunflowers that make sense." I nodded, folded the drawing, and placed it under my bed. I started hiding my report cards behind my door. Straight A's, circled in red pen. Not because I wanted to be praised, I'd stopped hoping for that, but because I needed someone, even if it was just me, to know they existed. Elaine once got a B+ in English, and we had chocolate cake that night. I ate leftover rice and washed the dishes. Russell, my dad, wasn't unkind, just quiet. He fixed leaky faucets, paid bills on time, and made pancakes on Sundays. But when it came to praise or protection, he looked the other way. I think discomfort made him mute. When I was 15, I overheard Mom talking to a friend on the phone. She said, "Jenna's smart, but she's not lovable, you know? Not like Elaine." I was standing in the hallway holding laundry. The socks slipped from my arms. I didn't pick them up for a long time. From then on, I stopped waiting to be seen. I became the reliable one, the girl who filled the fridge when Mom forgot, who folded Elaine's costumes and ironed them before recitals, who said, "It's fine," before anyone asked if it was. Senior year, I got a full scholarship to the University of Michigan. When the envelope arrived, I sat on the porch and read it 3 times. That night, I told Mom during dinner. She blinked and said, "Well, at least you won't cost us anything." Elaine was talking about prom dresses. No one paused the conversation. I left on my 18th birthday. A bus ticket in one hand, an old suitcase in the other. No cake, No hugs. Elaine was live streaming her bedroom makeover. Mom stood in the kitchen, texting. As I closed the front door behind me, no one looked up. I didn't cry. I didn't even look back. Some part of me had already left long ago, on the day my blue horse disappeared into the back of a shoebox, and no one ever asked to see it again. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. And that told me everything I needed to know. Some girls dream of weddings. I dreamed of a front door I could lock behind me. The first apartment I lived in was a shared rental with 3 other students and a broken furnace. Winters in Ann Arbor taught me that 2 pairs of socks and library hours until midnight were better than any heater. I worked the early shift at the campus cafe, restocked pipettes in the biology lab after class, and slept with textbooks spread around me like a fortress. I didn't mind. It was the first time I had a space of my own, however temporary. 1 month into freshman year, I mailed home a check for $100. It wasn't much, but I thought maybe it would mean something. Maybe Mom would call or at least text a thank you. She didn't. The check was cashed. Nothing else followed. I stopped sending money after that. By junior year, I had memorized the cheapest grocery aisles. I made soup from scratch, reused aluminum foil, and learned that silence is less painful when you fill it with movement. Studying, working, saving. I found rhythm in self-reliance. The campus was full of students chasing futures. I was just trying to build a present I could stand living in. Graduation came with a job offer I hadn't dared hope for, a full-time role at Everbright Biotech in Chicago. Most interns got thank you notes and LinkedIn endorsements. I got a contract. The salary wasn't extravagant, but it had health insurance and potential. And most importantly, it had my name on it. I moved to Chicago and rented a 400-square-foot studio above a noisy deli. It smelled like garlic and hope. I bought a chipped mug from Goodwill that read, "I earned this." I drank instant coffee from it every morning before catching the 6:45 train to work. For years, I lived frugally. Thrifted chairs, homemade curtains. I clipped coupons, watched YouTube videos on patching drywall, and resisted every urge to click, add to cart. My friends at work joked I was allergic to spending. What they didn't know was that for me, saving wasn't a habit. It was survival. The numbers in my bank account weren't money. They were freedom. Around year 6 at Everbright, I got my first performance bonus. Dr. Myers, our lead scientist, handed it to me with a smile and said, "You've got grit, Jenna." I thanked him and tucked the check into my coat pocket without looking at the amount. It wasn't long after that when I met Mrs. Fulton. She was a realtor who looked like someone's favorite aunt. Warm eyes, fast walking, and a voice like a cup of chamomile tea. I had browsed listings quietly for a year, never contacting anyone. But one Saturday in January, I walked past a flyer taped to a bakery window. 3-bedroom Cherry Tree, Evanston. Something about the way Cherry Tree was written in pen caught my attention. Mrs. Fulton greeted me on the porch, motioning toward the small balcony above. Perfect for reading or a quiet coffee. Inside, the floors creaked softly, like my childhood home, but the light danced across the kitchen tiles in a way that made me believe this place had forgiven its past. "This house has good bones," she said, resting her hand on the stair railing, "and a quiet spirit." On closing day, my 29th birthday, she handed me a glass of sparkling cider and said, "This is the part where you celebrate." I shook my head gently. "This," I told her, looking at the deed, "is my wedding." She didn't laugh, just nodded and said, "Congratulations, Mrs. Hartley. You did it." The first night in my new home, I placed the chipped mug on the windowsill and stood in the hallway for a long time, letting the silence stretch out like a soft rug. There were no trophies, no pastel dresses, just me, and that was enough. I painted the walls myself, one shade at a time, pale gray in the bedroom, cream in the hallway. The kitchen I left bright white, clean, new. I chose every cabinet knob, every curtain rod, every light bulb. This was mine, not inherited, not borrowed, not gifted. The cherry tree bloomed in April. I stood barefoot on the grass that morning, coffee in hand, and watched the petals fall. It felt like the house was exhaling. On a quiet Tuesday, I mailed a small card to my childhood home. No return address, no photos, just a single line written in steady ink. I'm doing fine. No need to worry. I didn't expect a reply. I wasn't looking for one. But 3 months later, my phone buzzed during a lunch break at the lab. It was a message from a number I hadn't saved, but recognized instantly. "Jenna, it's serious. Call me. It's about Elaine." I stared at the screen, the half-eaten sandwich on my desk forgotten. For a moment, the walls of my beautiful, quiet house felt just a little less solid. They didn't invite me to celebrate. They summoned me to surrender. The invitation arrived printed on thick ivory cardstock, gold script curling at the edges like it was holding its breath. "You are cordially invited to the engagement celebration of Elaine Hartley and Ethan Walker." No personal note, no hope to see you, just formality dressed up in expensive ink. I wore a plain black dress, the same one I'd worn to a colleague's retirement dinner, and brought a small gift, a silver picture frame I'd had engraved with, "Wishing you joy." Nothing extravagant, just sincere. The kind of gift people open politely and set quietly on a side table. The mansion in Lake Forest was the kind of place you saw in bridal magazines. White roses lined the driveway. Strings of twinkle lights hung like constellations across the hedges. Inside, waiters passed around glasses of champagne on silver trays. Elaine stood at the center of it all, wrapped in a champagne-colored gown, surrounded by people who had known her as nothing less than perfect. She didn't see me at first, or maybe she did and chose not to show it. Either way, her smile stayed glued in place as she posed for a photo with Ethan and their monogrammed engagement cake. Corinne found me before I even had a chance to put my gift on the table. "Jenna," she said, with that brittle smile she reserved for social occasions. Her eyes scanned me, my shoes, my bag, my necklace from a craft fair. "Your father would like to speak with you, privately." The words hung in the air like steam from a kettle. I followed her down a hall lined with framed photos of people I didn't know, and a guest book that Elaine had signed earlier as future Mrs. Walker. There was no mention of me, not even a scribble. The side room was dimly lit, tucked away from the music and laughter outside. Dad stood near the window, hands in his pockets. When I entered, he didn't look up right away. "You've settled in now," he said finally. His voice was low, unreadable. "I'm doing well," I answered. I didn't offer more. He nodded once. "Elaine's starting a new life. She deserves something solid." The silence between us was familiar. It had weight. "She needs a real home, a stable one," he continued. "You live alone. That house, you're not even using most of it." I felt the floor tilt slightly the way it does when you realize someone isn't just making conversation. "What are you saying?" Corinne stepped in then, as if on cue. "We think if you really want to support your sister, this is your chance. Transfer the house." As a wedding gift, I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "You want me to give Elaine my house?" "It's not like you have a family," she said gently, like she was softening a blow. "Elaine and Ethan could really build something there." I let out a short breath, a laugh maybe. "You mean the house I worked 10 years for? The one I bought outright after skipping every vacation, every luxury, every little thing that made life easier?" Russell's voice sharpened. "Don't be dramatic. We're asking for help." For family, I looked at them both. These two people who had taught me to eat cold leftovers while praising Elaine for a B+. "I sacrificed my entire childhood for Elaine," I said, calm and measured. "I'm done sacrificing." Corinne's smile vanished. "We're not asking for your life, Jenna. Just a house." "And I'm not offering it." Dad's jaw tightened. "Ungrateful," he muttered. I turned to leave. "No," I said. "Just done." Back in the reception hall, everything was too bright, too polished. Elaine laughed with someone holding a flute of rosé. Ethan glanced at me briefly but said nothing. I placed the picture frame on the gift table and walked out without waiting for cake. The sun was setting by the time I reached my car. Warm light spilled through the trees, lining the driveway, catching in the folds of my dress. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine. As I pulled out, my phone buzzed on the seat beside me. A text. Elaine, you seriously just ruined everything. They called it a celebration, but for me it felt like a setup. The glass conservatory in Highland Park shimmered under late summer sunlight. Tall windows arched like cathedral ceilings, catching every golden ray. Cream velvet chairs stood in perfect rows. Cascading orchids framed the altar. A harpist played something slow and elegant near the wall of glass. I walked in quietly, alone, just as the ushers were handing out programs. There was no name card at any table for me. A server gestured toward a chair near the entrance, close to the doors and far from the couple. I took the seat without protest. From there, I could see it all. The long aisle, the guests craning their necks, the way Corinne adjusted the drape of Elaine's gown with a practiced hand. Elaine glided down the aisle like she was floating. Her veil shimmered with tiny crystals, her smile controlled and camera-ready. Ethan stood at the front in a navy suit, looking every bit the groom from a Hallmark movie. The crowd murmured with admiration. Corinne beamed like she'd personally orchestrated the sun. I clapped once when the vows ended, out of politeness, nothing more. During cocktail hour, I stood by the water station, watching strangers toast with flutes of champagne. No one approached me. I wasn't surprised. Most of them didn't know I existed. Those who did, perhaps, knew better than to speak. Corinne found me again. "Your father wants to see you," she said, her tone clipped but sweet for anyone within earshot. I followed her toward the corner of the hall where a section had been curtained off with white fabric. The harpist's song faded behind us. Inside, the space was empty, except for a long table draped in silk and a wedding cake with 5 tiers. On the table beside it lay a metal cake stand engraved with Elaine and Ethan, "Forever Begins." Dad stood near the edge, staring at the cake like it had disappointed him. "You could have made this easy," he said without turning. I didn't respond. He finally looked at me. "You live alone. That house is wasted on you." "It's mine," I said calmly. "I bought it. I earned it." "She's your sister," he snapped. "She has a future, a husband, a family. I have myself," I said. Russell's eyes narrowed. "That's not enough. You have no one." "Then maybe I learned from watching you." The air between us snapped like a rubber band. Corinne stepped in. "We asked you for one thing." "And I said no." Russell's face flushed deep red. "Ungrateful," he growled. "Selfish." "No," I said. "I've just stopped bleeding for people who never noticed I was cut." Something shifted in his posture. He reached for the cake stand. I didn't think he would actually do it. But in the next second, the weight of metal slammed into the side of my head. A sharp, hot pain burst across my temple. The floor tilted, then came the sound, a thud, then gasps from beyond the curtain. I collapsed. Blood dripped down my cheek, warm and insistent. Voices scrambled. "Call 911!" someone shouted. Feet shuffled. A phone was already pressed to someone's ear. Kevin Liu, a guest from Everbright, crouched beside me. "Stay awake," he said. "Stay with me." Through blurred vision, I saw Ethan push through the curtain. His eyes widened. "What the hell happened?" Corinne stood frozen. "She fell," she said quickly. "She didn't fall," Kevin barked. "I saw him swing it." The harpist had stopped playing. Whispers rose, phones clicked. I could hear the faint buzz of people recording. 2 officers arrived minutes later, swift and quiet. One of them knelt beside me. The other turned to my parents. "Sir, you're under arrest for suspected aggravated assault." Russell didn't resist, just muttered, "This is family business." The officer didn't respond. He turned to Corinne. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us." "She's lying," Corinne hissed. "She's trying to ruin her sister's wedding." "She's bleeding from the head," the officer said. We'll take your statement later." They were both cuffed in front of 150 guests. I was wheeled out on a stretcher, past rows of silent faces. Elaine stood by the floral arch, her white dress still flawless, but her face was empty. No tears, no horror, just nothing. She didn't say a word. When he broke my skin, he didn't just spill blood. He confirmed everything I'd ever feared. At North Shore Hospital, the lights never turned off. Even in the middle of the night, machines blinked steadily like quiet witnesses. I woke up to the soft beep of a monitor and a dull ache above my eyebrow. A nurse named Lillian gently changed my bandage. 8 stitches, she said, but no fracture. You're lucky. I didn't feel lucky. A copy of the Chicago Sentinel sat folded on the side table. Father of the bride attack's elder daughter at wedding. The headline ran just above a grainy photo of me being wheeled out of the conservatory. Eyes half shut, a line of blood down my temple. I read it twice, then turned the page. Ethan came by that afternoon. He brought chicken soup in a thermos and a stack of magazines I had no interest in. But he stayed, no big speeches, just quiet presence. Sometimes that's all healing needs. On the 4th day, he came with purple tulips. I stared at them, stunned. "How did you know?" "You mentioned them once, back at Everbright. Said they made you feel safe." I hadn't remembered saying that, but he did. Damon Price arrived that evening. He was sharp, composed, mid-40s with a calmness that reminded me of a sealed envelope. Everything inside was ready, just waiting to be opened. "I'm here on Ethan's recommendation," he said. "I've reviewed the footage, the statements. We have a case. Assault, emotional abuse, attempted coercion of property." I signed the paperwork with a trembling hand but steady heart. It felt like breathing after a long time underwater. 1 week later, Damon filed a freeze motion. The court approved it within 48 hours. My father's accounts, joint and individual, were frozen pending the outcome of the case. Damon explained the motion slowly, clearly, making sure I understood each clause. I did. I wanted to understand. For the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was fighting. At home, I moved slowly. The stitches pulled when I bent down, so I kept everything within arm's reach. I read a lot, made soft meals, avoided mirrors, and Ethan came, every day, sometimes with a book, sometimes just with himself. He never asked for updates. He just sat, made tea, washed dishes. "You don't owe me anything," I told him once. "I know," he replied, "but maybe I owe something to the version of you who never got this." In early October, the story broke wider. A local podcast picked up the video, then a morning talk show. Suddenly, Elaine's wedding wasn't just gossip, it was viral. Her sponsorships with a bridal brand and a wellness app disappeared overnight. She issued a statement calling the incident a tragic misunderstanding. But the internet was less forgiving. Ethan broke off the engagement in a single, clean announcement. "I will not be associated with cruelty," he posted. "Some families use silence as armor. I choose transparency." He never named names. He didn't have to. By late fall, the court issued the formal complaint. 3 charges, 3 pages. The plaintiff line read, "Jenna Hartley." I held the order in my lap for a long time. The ink was dry, the language clinical, but something about seeing my name, at the top, not in the margins, made my hands shake. Kevin Liu agreed to testify. So did 3 other guests. Damon prepared the witness list, the timeline, the evidence. I approved each document carefully, no longer the girl who taped report cards behind her bedroom door. One morning, I stepped onto my porch and found that the cherry tree had begun to lose its leaves. The backyard was scattered in gold and crimson. I made coffee and watched the wind carry them down, one by one. I used to whisper someday into the dark. Now the system was finally whispering back. "We see you." The court gave me justice. But healing? That came later, between lavender roots and handwritten vows. The verdict came on a clear morning in March. I sat in the courtroom in a light gray dress, hair pulled back, no makeup. Not to be defiant, just honest. Damon stood beside me, steady as ever. Ethan held my hand, thumb tracing circles along my palm. The judge read the sentence with calm precision. On all counts, aggravated assault, prolonged emotional abuse, and attempted coercion of property, we find the defendants guilty. 8 years. No parole for the first 6. $325,000 in damages awarded to me. There were no cheers, no gasps, just the kind of silence that only truth can command. I walked out of the courthouse into early spring air that smelled faintly of rain and pavement. On the steps, Ethan turned to me. "You did it." I nodded. "Number we did." 2 months later, I stood barefoot in my backyard, the same ground I'd once painted cabinet knobs and dreamed of peace. 30 guests sat on white folding chairs under strings of soft lights. A wall of lavender bloomed along the fence line, planted one sprout at a time. The cherry tree had started to bud. There were no flower girls, no matching dresses. Just me, Ethan, and our promise. Damon officiated in a navy suit. When it came time for vows, I unfolded a piece of recycled paper and looked Ethan in the eyes. I used to think love meant shrinking to fit. Now I know real love expands you. I will never go silent again. I promise to speak, to listen, and to let this life bloom without fear. He smiled like he'd been waiting his whole life to hear those words. Maybe I had too. We toasted with lemonade. Ate cake we baked ourselves. Someone played guitar softly. No live stream, no hashtags, just sunlight and stories. 2 weeks later, Restore opened its doors. The office was a small converted bungalow near the lake. Clean walls, open windows, shelves filled with pamphlets, resources, and handwritten notes from survivors across the state. Damon handled legal aid. Ethan managed operations. I led the intake sessions. Our first visitor was a woman in her 50s. She wore a denim jacket and carried a plastic grocery bag. "I saw your story," she said. "Your sister's wedding, the trial. I watched the whole thing." She paused, eyes welling. It gave me the courage to leave. I didn't offer tissues. I offered a seat. Later, when she stood to go, she hugged me tightly. Her voice trembled. "I thought I was invisible." "I did too," I whispered back, "but not anymore." That evening, I reorganized the bookshelf in our living room. One shelf I labeled before, another after. Between them, a lavender-scented candle flickered gently. The voices of my parents didn't echo in this house, but their absence did, quiet and final. Elaine never reached out. Corinne and Russell remained behind prison gates, no letters, no appeals. And somehow, that emptiness gave room for everything else to grow. Ethan surprised me with a new welcome mat. Home at last. We brewed coffee every Sunday, planted vegetables in raised beds, and painted the guest room soft green. I began journaling again, not to prove anything, just to remember that I exist. Fully. One afternoon in late May, a teenage girl came to Restore. She sat across from me and said, "I want to be like you someday." I smiled gently. "Then start by being you." Sometimes I still dream of that old living room, trophies on the wall, my voice caught in my throat. But when I wake up, there's sunlight, a man who knows my favorite flower, and a house that carries only warmth. It took me 30 years to stop asking for space at their table, but now I've built my own. I never imagined justice would arrive in a courtroom or that healing would come through the quiet planting of lavender in my backyard. But standing barefoot on the soil I chose, surrounded by people who see me, I finally understood what peace feels like. Sometimes the family we are born into cannot offer what we need, but that doesn't mean we stop seeking love or safety. When we choose to stand up, speak out, and build something different, we're not breaking tradition. We're rebuilding trust in ourselves. As I've learned, the most powerful vow we can ever make is to honor our own worth. If this story spoke to something inside you, I invite you to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Someone out there may be waiting to feel a little less invisible.